Chapter 17, Breaking Juarito, November 15, 1998. A few miles from the building where Detective Reyes studied the PT1 night, Juarito begged the two cops to close the door. They were jammed into the closet-sized room Salinas police referred to as Denny's, and Juarito didn't want people to see he was there, especially no one from the familia. Nobody knew why the room was called Denny's, although some cops said the interrogation table was actually taken from the restaurant of the same name. Whether it was bought, stolen, or donated was never made clear. The room's walls were covered with thick carpet patterned in a deep blue, a color thought to instill tranquility. High in one corner, a small video recorder pointed down. 3 months had passed since Juarito had met with Mo about Maquillo's murder. That night it was reasonable to suspect that Mo was going to hit him because he knew too much. But Mo had been surprisingly cool and simply ran down Juarito on what to say if the cops came around. They went over the protocol, how he was supposed to insist he'd given Maquillo a ride to the Harmony Lounge that night and never saw him again. So what the hell was he doing here today? He'd woken in the jail this morning with less than 2 months to serve. Life looked pretty good when the day began. Juarito could feel proud that his son had already graduated high school, and Juarito was doing pretty good too, taking care of the essentials and helping his mother. She was a hard-working farm worker who knew nothing of gangs or his involvement in guns and murder. Okay, he'd made a mistake when he decided he deserved some fun on his birthday. He pissed dirty 2 days later and now was back on jail on a 60-day violation. Before going back in though, he made sure to leave his mom 2 checks to make the car payments until he got home. It was reasonable to think that life was looking up. So why did the cops roust him this afternoon from his cell in the Monterey County Jail and haul him to the police station with no explanation? The 2 cops offered Juarito a soda, and they sent someone to bring it in before they Mirandarized him. They told him they were only reading him his rights as a formality since he was already in custody at the jail on a violation. The officers said their names were Groves and Miller and told him they wanted to know all about him and Maquillo. Were you guys pretty tight, or? The one called Groves began. Were we friends? Juarito said. Were you? Yeah. The other butted in, the cop named Miller. Well, these guys are telling us that, he was a pretty important member of the gang. Alright, Juarito said, I guess. Would that be fair to say? We don't know much. That's not our bag, Miller said. Well, he was well known, yeah. I mean, he had a big old stamp on his back and everything, and that's pretty dedicated, huh? Miller said. That much was true. Maquillo had Nuestra Familia tattooed in gigantic curving letters across his entire back, and in the middle was the gang's revolutionary sombrero, pierced by a dagger dripping of blood. You would not live a day wearing that tat if you weren't a for real member of the NF. We have a lot of information that we've developed about how he got to Salinas and things like that, Miller said. The cops didn't seem to be in a hurry as they let that sink in. No one came back with Juarito's soda. I'm not saying that, you pulled the trigger or nothing, Miller continued. The other cop, the one called Groves, interrupted. Okay, we know you were with him that night he died. Apparently Groves was going to be the cut to the chase guy tonight. Yes, Juarito said. Okay. He told them he dropped Maquillo off at the Harmony and went on his way. They asked if he joined Maquillo for a drink. He said no. How come, Groves asked. How come what? How come you didn't go with him? You guys are buddies. Cause he just told me to drop him off and that was it, sir. I dropped him off and I jammed. I ain't gonna question the man or nothing. They asked when he found out about the murder and he said on the TV news that night. Groves pointed out that, actually, it happened too late to make the 11 o'clock broadcast. They caught him in his first lie. Okay, Juarito stammered. It must have been the morning news. Word on the streets was that some wetback killed Maquillo. Everybody was shocked because everybody loved the guy. But still, Grove said, when you saw him, you felt close to him. Of course I did. So this is something you would want to figure out what happened. If I could. Well, I guess everybody would. I'm saying, but, okay, Grove said, rising. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a little break right now. They offered to get a Coke from the machine down the hall. We don't want to hammer too much, Miller said before shutting the door, leaving Juarito to contemplate the blue-walled despair of Denny's. An officer came in, set a soda on the table, and left. The two brand new cops came in and sat down. One had a soft, almost jolly face, friendly as a kid's favorite puppy, but everyone on the streets knew him. That face did a great job of hiding the cop's reputation for breaking the coldest of them. This guy knew gangs better than gangs did themselves. People on the corners called him Robocop, and you knew you were in trouble if he came rolling up on you. Smiling, Robocop picked up the conversation as if he'd been in the room all along, quickly recapping the part about Juarito leaving Mikey at the Harmony Lounge. "And you're a witness, right?" he suggested. "You're not a bad guy." This was the cop's classic hook for recruiting informants. You're either a witness or a suspect. Juarito sipped his soda. He belched and said, "Excuse me?" He had to give this cop something, so he offered up that he and Mikey were in Quentin together and that he had gotten out 4 days before Mikey in late July. "Matter of fact, I went to pick him up in Gilroy," Juarito said helpfully. When he didn't find his friend at the bus station, he said he drove over to a party at the Garlic Festival and forgot about Mikey for a couple weeks. That is, until the last night of his friend's life. That night he called me. It was about 7:30, 8 o'clock, because I got to Salinas. It was already dark. It was about 9:30 when I dropped him off, and that was it. Juarito waited to see if they bought it. They didn't say anything one way or the other. Okay, now, the other cop, a guy named Rust, asked, "What punishment might you receive for snitching on somebody?" The switch to this stark subject had to mean that they were up to something sneaky. Juarito answered cautiously, "Death." "Could they assault you otherwise?" Russ asked. "No. I mean, would they give you a tongue lashing? Or maybe you get slashed and get a puto mark?" "No. They would probably just kill you. So that's why you don't want to say." "Yeah," Juarito said. Robocop pounced on the admission. "From what you're saying, it sounds like you kind of fear some of the ramifications." "Well, anybody will. Sure, anybody would." "Pretty normal," Robocop agreed. "The cops knew a lot about him," Robocop said. "In fact, they've been following him and saw firsthand that he was going to work every day." This startled Juarito. "But Robocop said, hesitating, "I think the best way to put it is, you may think you have a lot of friends out there, right?" Juarito said. "But as it turns out, you may not. And the only friends you may have at some point may be us." For the first time since this shakedown started, the fear was apparent in Juarito's voice. "What do you mean?" he asked. "What do you mean by that?" "You know what happened," Robocop said. "You think about that and try to figure it out. Whoever did this, what they're gonna think. You're not gonna have a lot of friends. I stayed away from all that. I was working. I didn't get involved. You're more of a witness than you're telling us. And we're gonna show that, and you're gonna be caught, and you're gonna be forced. Your hand is going to be forced at one point to tell the truth." This was fucking blackmail. A chorus of shadows closed in while Juarito labored to spin more bullshit. But these cops weren't stupid. They were setting them up for some kind of fall. But how? What was their game? It was moments like these when Denny's became as claustrophobic as the padded cell of an asylum. The ceiling and walls seemed to slide inward, and your mind squeezing in a vice of its own creation. Why did they carpet the walls anyway? So no one could hear the screams? So the bruises wouldn't show if the cops got rough? What the hell did these assholes want? "You don't want to get yourself in any deeper than you already are," Robocop said. He sounded like a protective older brother. "Once we put the story on the table, you may have problems with these guys, okay? Because you're a key part of this." It was impossible to tell what the cops knew, if they were trying to pin more on him than he deserved, or if they were somehow aware of the illegal things he'd done. Their threat, however, was clear. Robocop asked if anyone had coached Juarito on what to say to them. Indignant, he answered, "Of course not." "Was he really your friend?" Robocop asked, as if casting doubt on Juarito's loyalty. This angered Juarito. "Yeah, he was my friend, yeah. But like I'm telling you, snitching ain't right." Robocop appraised him. "You know, I kinda have some sympathy for you," the cop said, letting up the pressure just enough to let Juarito breathe. "You've made it through some pretty hard times. You're 36, right? You're working. We know you work hard. We know what time you leave in the morning. We know what time you come back home." Seriously? Again, they surprised Juarito. But you're doing your thing. You're trying to make things right. Yeah, I am. You're stuck with these guys, essentially. And now something's really bad. Juarito didn't respond. As compassionate as those words sounded, Robocop could switch up so fast, he'd leave you as dizzy as a kid coming off a tilt-a-wheel.